Hello, good morning. Greg here at Flowering Spikes. So I was watching YouTube the other day, and on my feed, this video came up and said 10 greatest ECM records. And I remember a few years ago on YouTube, a few different people had done similar videos. And I watched the one that came up, and it was just like the worst collection of ECM records you could ever imagine. And I understand it's such a vast catalog that everyone has a different opinion, and I'm not going to say what video this was or what records he said, but I just realized I should make one of my own because ECM, I've always said if I was only going to listen to the records from one label for the rest of my life, it would for sure be ECM. It really has everything where jazz, classical, avant-garde, electronic, world music all meet right in the center. And I'm not going to get into some documentary about the history of ECM or anything, other than just to say it started in Munich in 1969 with Manfred Eicher, and he had a couple other partners whose names I can't remember. I probably could have researched it, but I didn't. And Manfred has been the producer of every single ECM recording from 1969 to 2025. And I still buy new ECM records when they come out now. I probably got 10, 15 of them last year. The only thing I will say is that Manfred's motto for the label was ECM records, the most beautiful sound next to silence. And that just about sums it up. Choosing just 10 is so difficult for me. I mean, I could have done 20 in a heartbeat. I could have done top 30, and all 30 records I would have shown would have been incredible. But I've spent the last couple days sitting here in the shop, putting on records that I know I love and just sort of paring them down a little bit to get to these 10. And there is a theme, an unintentional theme that runs through them, whether it's stylistically or players or whatever, but this is my 10, and this is the sound of ECM that I love. So obviously starting at 10 is this record right here, Codona, Colin Walcott, Don Cherry, and Nano Vasconcelos. And Colin Walcott, of course, playing sitar and tabla, and also playing kalimba. And Don Cherry's playing trumpet and flute. But I would say that I love the tracks where he's playing flute more. And even though there's tablas and Nano Vasconcelos is playing a lot of hand drums and percussion, and he's also playing a berimbau, which is kind of like a Brazilian talking drum. Don Cherry's flute playing is so meditative and beautiful and spiritual. Even though there's sitar and tablas and stuff, he's not leaning into the Indian classical really. He's playing more like Japanese, like hijoroshi pentatonic scales that would be used more traditionally, like for a shakuhachi. Most of the compositions are written by Colin Walcott. And I mean, this record is just so beautiful and organic sounding and natural sounding and peaceful and flowing. Definitely one of my favorite records, not only from ECM, but ever. Gary Burton New Quartet's recorded in 1973. They recently reissued it on the ECM Luminescence series. I didn't get that record. I mean, I have this one, and I honestly don't know how you could remaster it or reissue it and have it sound any better than this. This record is like the best possible version of proggy, fusiony jazz quartet that you could ever imagine. Gary Burton, who's always been amazing on everything, is just virtuosic on this record. His playing is so incredible. And it has some mellower sections too, and it reminds me in certain parts, this may seem weird, but it reminds me a lot of live Grateful Dead. some of the jams. And I wonder if the Dead listened to this or he listened to the Dead or if they knew each other. But it has that feeling of just like a looseness and a precision, but just like going for it so hard that you're just barely hanging on. And the bass player, Abraham Labriolet, I think is his name. I had never heard of him before I heard this record, and I looked him up, and apparently he's like one of the most famous session bass players ever. He's recorded like 4,000 records. And man, this guy is just such a monster. Like, this whole record is driven by the bass. And I mean, if you play bass, if you love listening to bass, any of that stuff, like, listen to this record, crank it up. This guy is just an absolute genius. All right, number 8, also one of my favorite ECM covers that they ever put out. This is Cycles by David Darling from 1982. And David Darling is one of my favorite cellists ever, just incredible player. So on this record, David Darling's playing cello and 8-string electric cello, Colin Walcott, sitar, tablas, and percussion, Steve Kuhn playing piano, Arnold Anderson on bass, and Jan Garbarek on saxophone, who this is probably the most subdued, mellow, really pretty Jan Garbarek you will ever hear on any ECM record. This record is very thoughtful, mournful, it's slow. A lot of David Darling's albums have really slow tempo, really beautiful, thoughtful cello playing. And every other musician just falls in line with that mood. And you know, in painting, it's like there's this sort of saying that you build a scaffolding with your bottom layers and then you can hang things on that scaffolding, decorations across the final layers. And I feel that's what's happening here with the other musicians. Like, Steve Kuhn is just, it's not driven by the piano in any way. He's just decorating and accenting and hanging things on the scaffolding of the structure of these songs. And the whole record is just extremely delicate and beautiful, and just a beautiful record. This album is Journal October by David Darling, and it was really a toss-up as to which one I was going to pick, so I feel like I couldn't have talked about Cycles and not at least mention Journal October, which is one of my personal favorite albums ever. And I feel like this record, it was recorded in 1980, I think? Yeah, 1980. And this one record could be the template for every neoclassical soundtrack work, whatever, that has come since then. This album could be the soundtrack to any film. It's a complete solo album in that he plays everything. He plays electric cello, he plays acoustic cello, he plays gongs, bells, there's some chanting going on, a little bit of percussion. And it's just tracks, multi-tracks of him playing over on top of himself. This is just harmonically so rich and beautiful, but also so haunting and somber. And the tone is like, this should be on any audiophile top 100 list of albums ever or anything. I mean, the cello on this recording sounds better than Starker's Bach Suites for Unaccompanied Cello. Just an incredible record in every single way. Highly recommend you check it out. All right, number 7, Jan Garbarek, All Those Born with Wings. And even though in general I will talk shit about Jan Garbarek ruining other albums from ECM artists that are kind of these tranquil records, and then he just comes blaring in, like there's some albums by Shankar and Zakir Hussain that I love, but I just wouldn't put on this list because the saxophone really just kills the mood of the record. I don't know why Manford chose him to be on so many records when I feel like a lot of the times it didn't need him to be there, but left to his own devices, sort of percolating in his own world and his own musical language, Jan Garbarek is incredible. This record, which also has another one of my favorite covers ever, this is, again, a truly solo record. He's playing everything. There's really deep organ on here, synth and organ arpeggios going through the whole thing. A lot of it's just drenched in this hall reverb, and you can hear banging on bass drums and timpanis in the background and chanting and groaning. And I mean, this is a dark record. It has this kind of like goth Renaissance feeling to the whole thing. And his saxophone playing in the right context, in the context of his own compositions and his own palette, is really incredible. And like, this completely has the classic Jan Garbarek, just dying, screaming animal, insane sounds. But with the landscapes that he's laid in the background, it makes perfect sense. In the whole world, his musical vision is totally complete, and this is just a stunning record. Number 6, I've never heard of this album before. I just saw it in a record store one day and bought it for like $3 or whatever it was. I've never seen it since. I've never heard anyone talk about it. This is Charlie Mariano and the Karnataka College of Percussion. It's just such an interesting juxtaposition of Charlie Mariano, kind of old school hard bop sax player, with a group of Indian classical players. And he's playing a lot of flute on this too, and the flute is so pretty. It's such beautiful flute playing. And unlike Don Cherry's stuff, he really is playing the ragas along with it. And the singer on this record, R.A. Ramamani, is just absolutely the star of the show. Like, this might be the greatest singer in the world. This could be the greatest singing you've ever heard. It's just so intense and passionate and just beautiful, soaring voice. And I am not the hugest fan of singing or vocals, especially in English. If I could understand the lyrics, like I hate lyrics. I like it much more so when it's in another language that I do not understand, and I just focus on the melody and the timbre of the voice and the soul of it. But this woman is just mind-blowing. This is such a beautiful Indian classical record with kind of the ECM twist, and it's reverby and it's got some saxophone. It's just a beautiful album. So number 5, everyone knows this record. If you don't know this record, turn off this YouTube video right now, go to whatever streaming service you listen to and just blast this record. This is John Abercrombie, Dave Holland, and Jack DeJohnette. For sure the greatest power trio ever to be on ECM, but I mean, I put it up there with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. I mean, this is better than Cream. This is better than any other trio you've probably ever heard. But as much as I love this record, number 5 will be Gateway Part 2, which is the second part to this album. Recorded, I think, a year later. And where the first one is really rocking and it has a very rock thing going on, this one is far more jazzy and spiritual and just laid back. It reminds me of like the morning after Gateway is Gateway 2. And Dave Holland is just so incredible on this album. I love John Abercrombie's playing. He actually plays acoustic on this one way more than Gateway. Gateway is mostly electric, just ripping guitar solos. This is a little more thoughtful and slowed down. And the whole thing ends with, I believe it's just a duo of Jack DeJohnette playing a piano composition and Dave Holland playing bass. Beautiful, sublime, serene record. Highly recommended. At number 4, John Sermon, Karen Krog. This album is called Such Winters of Memory. And for someone who just said, I don't like vocals, you have Karen Krog, a vocalist. One of my favorite jazz singers, but her voice is so haunting and ethereal and deep that she's not a pop singer at all. Actually, as a matter of fact, if you've never heard this album right here, this is on Enya. The album, it's just called Live at the Festival. Karen Krog, Bobby Hutcherson, Harold Land, Bill Evans, Eddie Gomez, Archie Shepp. She does a version on this with Harold Anderson playing bass of Roundabout Midnight that is just one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. If you can find it, pick up that record. It's incredible. And I don't want you to think all those people are playing in the same band. It's like 4 different sets of music. But anyhow, back to this record. So Karen Krog singing on here. A lot of the time she's singing just more vocalizing and just singing harmonies, and a lot of like really beautiful moving counterpoint with synths in there, just kind of like laying the landscape. A lot of times with like nice big pad synths in there underneath her voice. So there's a lot of synth on here. There's like really, really deep, drony Oberheim bass synth on here. There's a drummer, Pierre Foire, on here, and he playing the drums more like a percussionist than like a 4-on-the-floor drummer. There's a lot of rolling and cymbal washing and stuff. And then just some outright really beautiful jazz drumming. There's a couple songs where Karen is also playing the tambura and just droning that out. So with the tambura, the Oberheim, the arpeggios, her harmonies working in there. And then John Sermon is playing really avant-garde modern saxophone, but he's always keeping it tonal. It never gets into screeching and squonking and free form in any way. It's always rooted in tonality, even though it's very sideways melodically. Just a super interesting record. Like, what a strange combination of people and instrumentation. And that really exemplifies what I love most about ECM, is that the artists in Manford, I think, really took it upon themselves to really just expand on the concept of what a jazz group could be, if you call it jazz. But this is like a precursor to electronic music in some ways that came not shortly after this in film scoring and things like that. And it also doesn't really sound at times too far removed from something like Dead Can Dance. Beautiful, beautiful record. Number 3, Steve Reich, Music for 18 Musicians. I mean, how could you have a list and leave this record off? That would be insane. Kind of like with Gateway. If you don't know this record, turn this video off. I'm not helping you. I don't know how to help you. Go somewhere, sit down, listen to this record from beginning to end, and just have your mind blown. This record is a trance. It's a hypnotic, propulsive collection of spiraling rhythms and melodies. And each rhythm and each melody slowly just slips out of phase with everything else at different time segments, giving you just such exquisite polyrhythms, but they only last for a short amount of time. Like ripples on a lake in the sunshine, you just watch them come and go. And it's just such a hypnotic, beautiful acid trip of a record. And I think Steve Reich is one of the most important composers, and this is one of the most important records of the entire 20th century, right at the height of his work and minimalism. I have many, many, many Steve Reich albums, but you know, this I think will always be the classic. Okay, number 2. This is Elani Karendra with Music for Films. You will never see this record. You will never find this record in the wild. I hunted for this record for years. When you do find it, you will probably pay hundreds of dollars for it. One of the rarest of the ECMs because it came out late, and I think it came out in 1990, so they weren't really pressing vinyl at that point. And as the title suggests, this is music for films, from films. The majority of it comes from the trio of films by Greek director Theo Angelopoulos. And it's also interesting to note that everyone in the string ensemble and the soloists are all Greek musicians also. This was recorded in Greece. The 3 Angelopoulos films are The Beekeeper, Voyage to Cythera, and Landscape in the Mist. I have seen these films, incredible films, all of them. There are also pieces on here from 2 other films. And what this is really is a collection of very short vignettes, very emotionally powerful, little tiny vignettes from the film. And this also has Jan Garbarek on it. And I'm starting to think at this point, like, as much as I thought I didn't, maybe I like Jan Garbarek. I don't know. I have to reassess everything now after selecting these records. This record is melancholy, it's depressing, it's heavy, it's slow. A lot of these seem like little, like 1-minute pieces from like a Sibelius adagio. Just beautifully written, beautifully scored. The playing is so thoughtful. And then every 2 or 3 little vignettes, you get Jan Garbarek on there playing some really beautiful melodies. It kind of, the way he's playing on this record almost reminds me of the album he did with the Hilliard Ensemble that was all choir in him. Kind of the same thing. This is all orchestrated music, so I'm sure his parts are written. And aside from the string ensemble, I believe there's an accordion, a harp, there's oboe. So there are soloists that carry certain lead melodies through it. But just a beautiful, somber collection of music. And I guess, like I said at the beginning, you'll never find it, so stream it or get it on CD. You know, you probably get the CD for $2. Okay, so before I get to my number 1 record, this is the part with the honorable mention of my all-time favorite ECM artist. And there's really not one record that I could have picked because it's more listening to his entire oeuvre of songs and compositions. And this is Stephen Micas. He plays acoustic, 6-string, 8-string, 12-string guitars. He plays flute, shakuhachi, dulcimer, table harp, percussion, bells. And each one of his albums has a little slightly different instrumentation into what he's doing, but they all create a very similar vibe and atmosphere. And I just think he's one of the greatest songwriters, composers, guitar players ever. And so these are a bunch of his different records. This one is Wings Over Water. This one is Listen to the Rain. This one is just called Koan, another one of the most beautiful ECM covers. This is Twilight Fields. This one is Till the End of Time. And you really just have to listen to all of them. And I just can't say enough how much I love listening to his records and how much of an influence I think he's been on my own solo records. Also, outside of music for 18 musicians, this was the first ECM record I bought. I can't even tell you how many years ago. It still has the price tag, says $10. And I just saw it, and I just love the cover, and I picked it up and brought it home, and it was just like, So there you go. Highlight on Stephen Micas. By the way, he still makes records. I think he just put out a record a couple months ago. So from like the 70s until now, he's been making just a consistent stream of records for ECM, and all of them, I'm telling you, are incredible. And that brings us to number one. And if you couldn't tell from watching the first 9, my favorite ECM album of all time is Cloud Dance by Colin Walcott, which features Colin on sitar and tabla, John Abercrombie on guitar, Dave Holland on bass, Jack DeJohnette drums. This is the culmination of everything I've been talking about with all of these players through the first top 10. On this record in particular, the stars, the heavens, whatever, all line up in such a beautiful way. And each one of these guys, I think, is just at their pinnacle on this record. Pretty much all Colin Walcott compositions. I probably have 25 Dave Holland albums, all his solo records, his duos, 2 basses with Barry Phillips, his cello and guitar record, all of his trios, quartets. Dave Holland on this record is driving this train. This is just a masterclass. His virtuosity, soul. It sounds like he's playing music from 1,000 years ago and also playing music from the future. It's just incredible. John Abercrombie on this plays so beautifully, so tastefully. And then the sitars and the tablas of Colin Walcott. Definitely give this one a listen. This record I listen to at least like once a month. I put this record on. Also his album Grazing Dreams, I think it's called. It's also killer. Same, very similar lineup. And that's it. I can see now in the little screen that my camera is going to die. And that's all I wanted to do, was show you my personal 10 favorite ECM records. And I did it, and I hope I did it in a succinct and informative and in as short a period of time as I possibly could, talking about records that mean so much to me in my life and my own art and appreciation of art and music from the greatest record label that's ever existed on earth. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.